What's going on, ladies and gents, boys and girls, guardians of all ages? Joker back again, once again, and this world around you. The people you meet. They're a little thin, right? Cardboard and drywall. Cheap theater. Come on. Try it out. Say it. I'm more real than this. Feels good, doesn't it? I'm the only real person here. Isn't it like their insults and their bullets just went a little soft? Cardboard, drywall, and cheap theater is exactly the way that I would describe Destiny's world building, but it's probably not how you should describe your internet security. Well, that's where today's sponsor comes in, NordVPN. Protect yourself before you wreck yourself this holiday season with NordVPN. It's that time of the year where people are traveling, they're shopping online more, they're trying to find the last Turbo Man action figure for little Timmy, and not necessarily thinking about their online security. Have you ever had somebody steal thousands of dollars from your bank account during the Christmas holiday in Ohio of all places? And so you have to go to or call your bank, get your card canceled, have an investigation opened into the theft, wait for reimbursement as the investigation goes on, then wait 5 to 10 business days for a new debit card. To say it's a hassle would be the understatement of the century. Trust me, I know. But not only does NordVPN protect you while you're shopping online, it stops your internet provider from tracking you, and it can do all of that while you're on the go. On top of all of that wonderful goodness, NordVPN also offers super fast servers in over 60 countries, no data logging, 24/7 customer support via live chat and email, double data encryption for increased anonymity. But wait, there's more. It works in China, and if you don't like it, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. But Joker! I hear you cry out, oh contrarian commenter of contrarian comments. VPNs are expensive. Well, that's where you're wrong. Go to NordVPN/ButtJoker or use the code ButtJoker at checkout to get a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month with a huge discount. I want to go ahead and thank NordVPN for sponsoring this video and helping us fend off the hordes of yellow YouTube dollar signs. But back to our show. Cardboard, drywall, and cheap theater. Load into the tower on any given day in Destiny, and what do you see? You might see a handful of players, or pointless NPCs on movement loops with recycled Destiny 1 dialogue. There are the vendors, of course, but they might as well be screaming, "Welcome to the circus of value!" as you approach, because ultimately they're little more than a vending machine who offer algorithmically created bounties, so busy work for EXP. Then there's your reputation pickups, but often reputation pickups are more of a bother to sort through than actually any real reward for the time that you've put in leveling them up. The tower in and of itself is a pure waste of time, and honestly would be better if relegated to a menu option, just like the cash shop. But Bungie lampshading their inability to create vibrant and engaging worlds by calling it out as cheap theater, by saying that their characters are little more than cardboard and drywall, in the text of a Year 1 lore tab, does not absolve the writers and developers on just how unengaging Destiny's world building really is. And I shudder to think what the experience for new players is as they're just thrust into the world. I've spent years following all the lore. I've been here from the start, from one bad DLC and messy retcon to the next. I watched as Destiny spent the first half of its life cycle exploring its worlds and history through lore cards that weren't even in the game. I remember when I used to be able to convince myself that was good enough, because it was breadcrumbs and some semblance of what felt like esoteric knowledge that only a few could piece together. Perhaps I'm just being overly dramatic, I tend towards it. But now I look back at Destiny and so much of its narrative only exists in YouTube videos, because Bungie doesn't think that their world is worth keeping around. So if Bungie doesn't care about Destiny, its world, and its world building, why should I care? Why should anyone? This is all culminated in what is honestly the finest example of both Bungie and Destiny 2 letting its players down. The New Light experience is, in essence, a sad, sad joke. The barest of minimums in terms of world building and narrative. Little more than nostalgia bait for Destiny 1 players, and a glorified 2-hour systems tutorial that should serve as a warning to new players. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here, because it does not get better. Of course, this doesn't just stop with a game world that does a piss-poor job of being anything more than thinly veiled set dressing for a handful of banal systems that gate the only content that players really find engaging, dungeons and raids, but in fact, infects every aspect of Destiny's game design. Let me ask you a question. What is Destiny? Well, before the Bungie dev team opened their mouths and made the stupid mistake of calling Destiny an MMO, I would have said that Destiny was a cooperative, episodic looter shooter. Halo with extra steps, worse menus, and better boss fights. But Bungie says it's an MMO. It's an MMO just like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft, and that makes sense. Luke Smith, who was game director up until a year ago, would often reminisce, not unlike a washed-up alcoholic father still living in his high school football glory days, about being a scarab lord in World of Warcraft. And this Warcraftian mindset, for better or worse, would infect everything about Destiny. It would be an absolute lie to say that Bungie hasn't made some strides when it comes to storytelling. The Crow and Aldrin character arcs are quite possibly some of the strongest writing in all of Destiny, even with the caveat that a tremendous amount of that work is offloaded to lore cards. That story, that character arc, is lost to the YouTube algorithm. Now, let's contrast that to Final Fantasy XIV, who prides itself on its story and world building and doesn't just pretend they're more important than what they actually are. I can play the entirety of Final Fantasy XIV's Saga of Light and Darkness, the war between Hydaelyn and Zodiark, right now. I don't need to dig through a mountain of lore cards to appreciate the humbling of Alphanod at the end of 2.5 when shit hits the fan, because I was there. I don't need lore cards or YouTube videos to understand Estinian, a character who you watch go from a bitter rival to one of your strongest allies by the end of A Realm Reborn, and who I can only imagine grows more in Heaven's Ward. I don't need lore cards to understand Emir, who's not only the utmost of daddy material, but you watch him politically maneuver between the isolationist nature of the Ishgardian civilization and the Holy Church of the Sea, all while trying to balance that between his want to help us and the rest of Eorzea. It is a masterclass in character writing. Or how about Graha, a character who, at least for me in A Realm Reborn, is a side quest character for the raid narrative. Oh hey, by the way, did you know the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV has fully fleshed out stories for their raids that you don't just read about in a lore book that's decoupled from the game and hidden on some website somewhere? Yay! And the game perfectly balances here what the player should know and should feel with what's already been established with relationships between other characters, with NPCs like Cid and Nero, and just all the new characters that you meet throughout this questline and their interpersonal relationships. The story does a masterful job of just balancing that. Without spoiling anything, the resolution to the Crystal Tower storyline masterfully balances a blossoming friendship, existing camaraderie, and a bittersweet farewell, to create moments of character actualization that are narratively engaging and emotionally satisfying, in ways that you just simply never see in Destiny 2. If comparing Final Fantasy XIV's well-written characters to Destiny isn't fair, because Destiny really only has 5 interesting characters and, 3 of them are dead? How about plots and themes? One of the main plot points in A Realm Reborn revolves around a refugee crisis, not too dissimilar from what Bungie tried to do with Season of the Splicer. However, Bungie was far too afraid to tell a deep and compelling story with any stakes or weight to it. And so what we got with Season of the Splicer was an oversimplified allegory, a child's understanding of modern refugee crisis. The Ul'dah refugee crisis is brought to the foreground of the story when Lady Yagiri and a group of refugees from Doma come to Eorzea seeking shelter after a failed rebellion against the tyrannical Garlean Empire drove them from their homeland. Final Fantasy XIV doesn't sit you down or place its hands on your shoulders and preach the moral lesson to you like you're a 5-year-old or perhaps too stupid and might miss its brilliant and original plot. It's more mature and nuanced than that. Final Fantasy XIV does this thing called daring to trust its audience to understand the point. In the story, the city of Ul'dah refuses the refugees. Some of the leaders do really want to help. Some point out that the refugees that they've already taken in from the Calamity 5 years prior to the story have taken a toll on the city, and that the city's resources are not limitless, while others who say they want to help only want to help because they see a profit in it from exploiting the refugees. The narrative really does take the time to show you all sides of the argument. You're shown the corrupt merchant class. You're shown the waning power of the Sultanate, who is more of a figurehead at this point than a true political power. You're shown that not everybody who votes against helping the refugees is a monster, and that not everybody who wants to help them is a saint. And this is something that you'll see over and over and over again, by the way. Moments where people that you have formed relationships with, who hold power, who have armies and land, make excruciatingly hard choices. And those choices don't necessarily always align with the player's interest or morality. Good people make morally great choices, not because they're bad or they're going to stab you in the back, but because that's what leaders have to do. It's real, it's authentic, it makes the world feel alive. Final Fantasy XIV is a very grounded and human story. For example, one of the first things that you do upon reaching Ul'dah is intervene between a merchant trying to take advantage of a refugee by accusing her of stealing. In another quest, you help a refugee girl whose parents have gone missing because the wealthy merchant class is exploiting the refugees. But on the flip side, you deal with gangs of refugees who are committing crimes. You see every facet, from the good to the bad, all while you're part of the process of trying to find the best solution to help this new group of Domin refugees and threaten the already tenuous peace of Ul'dah. And in the end, the solution that is found is not necessarily the most hospitable, but it is a solution and it's a chance that the Domin refugees are grateful for. Final Fantasy XIV brings a weight and an authenticity to the narrative. It demonstrates that the writers understand how the world works, and that there are not really people who are all good or evil. Some people may be darker than others, and monsters can ultimately be good, while saints can allow evil to happen. But you want to know what the best part is? The Ul'dah and Domin refugee crisis, unlike Destiny's Season of the Splicer, is not a one-and-done story. Not only does the narrative appear periodically throughout A Realm Reborn, culminating in A Realm Reborn's version of what Game of Thrones fans might appreciate as the red and purple weddings. For those of you not familiar with that terminology, I'll just say this. It's when everybody's political maneuvering pays off and does so during a 50-minute cinematic. Yeah, 50 minutes of cinematic. That is just one emotional gut punch after another. And while a 50-minute cinematic might sound daunting, that's another theme with Final Fantasy XIV's world building. When the hero wins or loses, the celebration or the mourning isn't relegated to some lore tab. You see it. You're an active part of it. That loss, that character death, not only do you feel it on an emotional level as a player, but the characters all around you are so well realized that you watch how everybody struggles with it. Because in Final Fantasy XIV, when you achieve even victories, sometimes those victories come at a high cost, and the game does not shy away from the cost of war and how it breaks people. Without getting too into it, towards the end of A Realm Reborn, a character dies, helping us vanquish a foe. You feel the sorrow and the anger over what happened. And with some cases, with some characters, you feel their self-loathing and their despise for themselves and the regret of things that were never said. For others, it's this bittersweet knowledge that this character went out on their own terms. And yet still for others, they have to keep moving. They have to pretend to be strong, because if they stop, that loss will crush them. These moments are real and raw and visceral. And this is because Final Fantasy XIV does a spectacular job with quiet moments. It lets the world and the characters just exist. Final Fantasy XIV just allows you to be part of the moment and truly appreciate everything that you're building over the course of the story. And even when sometimes it can feel daunting or slow, in the end, it's all truly worth it, because everything is paid off. Now, I don't say any of this as another scathing rebuttal of Destiny 2, but as a lesson. Destiny 2 can be so much more. Bungie could build a world where the player is more than a gun attached to a camera, and the setting is more than cheap theater, and the characters are more than cardboard and drywall. I believe that there are people at Bungie who desperately want to do just that, but management ultimately defines what Destiny is, and Destiny will only ever be what they want Destiny to be. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Remember to like, but only if you did. Subscribe for more. Feel free to donate to my Patreon if you're feeling particularly generous. But above all else, stay frosty.